Hello, and welcome to Lydia Nicole's Acting Smarter Now podcast. I am your host. If you're an actor who wants to level up your game, you have come to the right place because we've got all the insight and tidbits for you to help you with what you may need. My first question of the day is: how do you handle nervous actors?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really have to handle nervous actors that much anymore because a lot of things are self tapes now. So hopefully that I think sort of the best thing about the whole self tape thing is that it takes the nerves out of it. But if I am seeing actors, in person, um, there's a tone that I like to sort of set for my waiting room and for my when I bring actors in to see the director and the producers, if there's going to be, people in the room, I want the actors to know that I'm glad that they're there, that I'm rooting for them because I really am. Their work is my work. So if they do well, I do well. So I have a vested interest in their being comfortable. And so it's really sort of, I'll ask them if they have any questions. I'll go greet them before I bring them up the stairs to see everybody. Um, just sort of touch base with them and give them a vibe of warmth and gratitude to let them know that I'm glad that they're there.
Awesome. My guest today is the multi-faceted creative casting director who is my friend and is also an award nominated casting director, which I just found that out.
Oh,
4 times
yeah,
nominated, which is fantastic.
yeah.
But I
Thanks.
wouldn't expect anything less of you. I am talking about the fantastic Patrick Baca, who was not only my castmate in Stand and Deliver, but
Yep,
has been a wonderful guide and mentor over the years and was my manager at one time.
that's true.
Early on, when I didn't know how to treat managers, poor Patrick was subjected to my bad behavior.
Oh my
So
goodness.
thank you, Patrick, for joining us. Thank you. I don't know if you remember, but I remember. I remember having little fits like, well, why can't we do this? Why can't I do this? I don't understand. This is not working for me. So,
This is why I'm a casting director now. The actors drove me crazy.
and I have so much more appreciation for
Yeah,
you now because
yeah, good.
I know all the heartache that you
Yeah.
went through handling us actors. Um, so my first question for you is:
Yes.
when did you know you wanted to be an actor?
Oh, that came very early, in my life. I've always liked stories from when I was a little kid, and in school, I remember being in a play, like in grade school, and I remember my mom reading stories to me at night. My very first recollection of an actor and the stage is actually, I think I was maybe about 5 or 6. And I remember going to the local university. My dad was in college and he was in a play, and it was a Shakespeare play. I don't remember which one. I think, he wasn't a big role, but I remember seeing him on stage. And, and that was sort of like, that was a moment, that was a pivotal moment. But yeah, I've always just been fascinated by stories. When I was in grade school, there were things like, I think I remember something called, there was like little competitions that you could do in grade school. Like there was something called storytelling, where you would go and you'd compete against other kids at other schools. And I would do that. And there was something called picture memory, where they would give you like flashcards. You'd have these decks of cards, and they would be portraits, like classical portraits, Rembrandts, and you had to memorize the artist and the name of the the portrait and the year and and the style. And gosh, I was doing that when I was like in the fourth grade or something. But that was really fun. I think I was a teenager when I decided that I could maybe where my curiosity got piqued about maybe taking it to a higher level, to a professional level. Actually, you know what? I do remember now. When I was in the eighth grade, I had this great drama teacher, and one of my fellow classmates, she had a brother who came to speak to us, and he was a professional actor in New York. He was a theater actor, and I was just fascinated by somebody who was really out there doing it. And I think that from there I just started. I didn't have a whole lot of resources where I was living, where I was growing up. I did have a library, and there were bookstores, and I would just sort of go and seek out books and show business books and how-to books. There were a lot of them out there, and I just started reading them. And I just read them backwards and forwards, memorized them, and that's how I sort of got, interested in the business part of show business and film and television. And I still couldn't do a whole lot about it because I wasn't, physically in Los Angeles, but I would come to visit LA. My dad had a sister that lived out here, so I did get to come out here. So I remember I became aware of Dramalog. So I'd pick up Dramalog and read that, and I got to know the lay of the land of the landscape of Los Angeles. And when I think I was about maybe 13 or 14, my my dad owned a newspaper, a small newspaper, and it also had a print shop. And one of his employees I became sort of friendly with, and she told me that she knew that I was interested in show business, and she had a little touch of show business experience with show business because she told me that she had started a fan club, and I don't remember what it was for, if it was for a celebrity or if it was for a TV show, but I thought that was really interesting. And that sparked an idea in my mind. And because she had done it, I thought, oh, I wonder if I could do that. So I started to do research. And at the time, it's been about 14 or 15, because I remember the shows that were on, popular shows that I was watching were, there were some good sitcoms like Different Strokes and Facts of Life were on the air, and I would watch these shows. And so I thought, if I were going to start a fan club, who would I start it for? So I started to do research. I had my own phone in my room,
Oh,
my own
wow.
private phone line.
Wow.
Um, and so I would make calls to Los Angeles just to know that someone was picking up on the other line, was in Los Angeles. But I would call the studios. I started to sort of like just to hear them pick up the phone and say Paramount Studios or Universal Studios. That was like thrilling for me. But I actually figured out where they filmed Different Strokes and where they filmed Facts of Life. And I figured out that I could call the switchboard. I don't remember how, but I figured out what soundstage they were filming on. And then I would just call and say, hey, stage 33, please. And they would patch you through. And then somebody, would pick up on stage 33. And they'd say, stage 33. And I would say, and then I remember saying, hi, is Dana around? Because I thought, I would start a fan club for Dana Plato, but I wanted to talk to her to sort of get her permission. I didn't want to do it unofficially. So I actually got Dana Plato on the phone.
That was back in the day when you
That
could
was
do
where
that.
you could do that. And
Yes.
I remember I gave her my spiel. I got her on the phone, and I recorded the call because I had gone to Radio Shack, and I had this little device that you would connect to a tape recorder, and then it had a little sucky thing that you'd put onto your
I had
tongue
one
to
of
the
those.
receiver. Yeah, and I recorded the call, and and I asked her, I said, do you have a fan club? And she said, no. And I said, I'd like to start one for you. She said, great. She put me in touch with her mom. And then I sort of started this thing, with their permission. And then I sort of, her mom sort of became, my mentor, and sort of, and so I was 14 and, learning about, Dana's career. And I remember I would talk to her agents, I would talk to her manager, and I just started to learn. And then I started a second one for an actress that was a series regular on The Facts of Life. And that was Felice Schachter. She was one of the series regulars in the first season. And I got her on the phone. And I told her, "Hey, I have a fan club for Dana Plato. I'd like to do one for you. Would that be okay?" She said, "Yes, great." She said, "I'm going to put you in touch with my mom." Her mom was her momager, and she was in New York, and she was this really fun, tough showbiz broad. And then I started working with her mom, and her mom taught me a lot. I learned a lot about show business from her mom, and I would put together these kits that we would send off to the fans. But then I also had to write these newsletters. So yeah, I had these two moms, these two showbiz moms who were teaching me show business, and I was like 15 years old, and learning that way. And that was really, those were some pretty big early mentors that I had. And to this day, Dana's mom is no longer living, but Felice's mom, I'm still really good friends with to
Oh,
this day.
wow.
And she was a talent manager for a long time in New York. Yeah, I've known her for years. And so yeah, that's how I sort of.
And what brought you to LA? Now
So yeah,
not
so I
just the
did that.
visitations, but what
Right.
made you want to
So
move?
when I graduated high school was, I mean, I would have come earlier, but my parents, were not about to move. But the excuse to get me to LA was college. So I came out here to go to UCLA, to attend UCLA. So that's what got me here.
That's amazing. And
Yeah,
so once you were out here at
yeah.
UCLA, when did you start pursuing your acting?
Immediately. I had come out to LA when I was 17, when I was still in high school. I convinced my parents to let me come out for a summer and study. And I studied at UCLA, also at Strasberg. I studied with Danny Goldman um, for a summer. And during that summer, I had a friend who was out here, and he introduced me to a friend of his who was a photographer who had done his headshots. And this guy did some headshots for me. They weren't that great, um, but I went back home with not only with a summer's worth of real acting classes and real experience, but also with headshots. So when I came back to LA, before I moved back to LA, I had sent my headshots off to a bunch of agencies. And so the minute that I moved out to LA, I started interviewing with agencies. I actually already had the summer before, I had met a commercial agent, and he had said that he would sign me. Then I had to confess that I didn't live in LA. He said, "Well, when you come back out, get in touch with me." And so I stayed in touch with him, and he said, we picked up right where we had left off a year later. Now I'm 18. Now I'm living in LA. Sent me out on my first audition for a Jack in the Box commercial, and I booked it. I got it, and I got my SAG card like immediately. So yeah, that's how it started. I knew what to do because I'd read so many how to break into show business books. So I knew about resumes. I knew, cover letters. I knew, headshots. I knew the agencies. I knew where they were. It was hard to know their reputation and what they were looking for and what kind of actors, they represented. That was harder to figure out. You'd get a list of agencies from the Screen Actors Guild, and it was just names and addresses. So that took some time to figure out,
And
who
how
the
soon
agencies
did
were.
you discover the drama bookstore and Samuel French once
Oh,
you moved?
immediately. Oh my, Samuel French was like a candy land for actors. I'm sure I had discovered Samuel French, the physical store on Sunset, when I was 17. Yeah, and that is just like, was like nirvana, in there. So yeah, that was, man, I miss that.
I do too.
Oh man, that
My
was such a great place.
my first store was the drama bookstore when I first came to Los Angeles.
The
And
drama bookstore.
I was taking the bus at the time to Pasadena. I was staying in Pasadena, but I would walk because I worked at Casablanca, which was on Sunset in West Hollywood. I would walk from West Hollywood to Hollywood to go to the bookstore and then get on a bus to go to Pasadena.
Wow.
I loved it, and I would come back into town on Saturdays just to hang out in at the drama bookstore. Probably about 2 or 3 years later was when I discovered Samuel French, but up
Yeah.
until then, the drama bookstore was my go-to place because in New
Wow.
York we had a drama bookstore,
Right, right. I didn't
so
know that
I
there was one
knew.
in LA.
Yeah, there was. It was Larry Edmonds'
Oh,
drama
Larry Edmonds.
bookstore.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure. I remember
yeah,
Larry Edmonds. Oh,
yes,
sure. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
right on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, Larry Edmonds.
And
Yeah,
so
sure.
Saturday, that was my go-to place. It was
Yeah, that was
just the
great.
best. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made so you were acting, and then at some point you decided you were going to manage actors. How did that come about?
Well, here's what happened is so I move out here. I'm going to college. I'm pursuing my own acting career. I already have my agents, my theatrical agent and my commercial agent. Uh, and remember, I've already sort of learned about show business from the momagers, who mentored me for a couple of years. Um, so when it came to when I was going to UCLA, one of the classes that I was able to take as part of the major was an internship for credit, for course credit. So my agent, my theatrical agent, had just split from her partner, and she moved. She had an office on Beverly, and then all of a sudden she had moved to Sunset and Doheny, and I knew that she was looking for an assistant. She hadn't hired one yet, and now I've got to do this internship, and you could do it at a casting office, or at an agency, or at a production company. But because my agent was looking for an assistant, I called her up from school and I said, "Hey, Ricky, I've got to do this internship. I know you're looking for an assistant. How would you feel about me being your intern?" And she said yes. And that question and that response, that answer was really life changing, because now I would go to her office every afternoon, and I was like a sponge, just soaking up. I was just very curious, and there's a lot that we don't see as actors, about our careers, that's handled by the brokers, the agents, and I was just really curious about what was going on behind the scenes, and so I interned for her, and then I continued. Um, and each time after each quarter, I moved up. She was a two-man office, so it wasn't hard, to move up in responsibility very quickly. So I started off as her intern, then became her assistant, then became a trainee, and then like 2.5 years later, she had trained me to be like a junior agent, and I had my own territory that she gave me to cover, my own casting directors to cover. And so when it came time, so it got to the point where either I was going to continue down that path and be an agent, or not. Um, and I didn't move on to LA to be an agent. I was interested in how it worked, but that wasn't going to be my career. I was still auditioning and still doing commercials and stuff. So I stopped. But then, there came a point where I was going to have a real job, a survival job in between auditions. So rather than being a waiter, I remember I was taking a business class, and we had to write a paper, a proposal, do a business proposal on what we would do, if we were to go into business, what our enterprise would be. So I thought about it, and I thought, wow, I'd spent 2.5 years working for my own agent, and I thought, what a waste to not do anything with that information or that experience. So I thought maybe I could put that to use And rather than being an agent, I could do the next best thing, which would be to become a manager, because managers were not licensed by the state of California. They weren't franchised by the Screen Actors Guild. You could start a management company. You just needed clients and you needed access to information. So that's what I did. That was my idea. And so I started off very modestly. I became a legitimate client of breakdown services based on my work history with my own agent. She wrote a letter for me. And so I had a little bit of a resume experience that way. And then I had clients who were with agents. So the agents were able to verify that they had a relationship with me. That became sort of my survival job. So I
That's
became a
amazing.
manager rather than being a waiter. I decided, I'll just continue this and it'll be related. It'll be more related to acting. And so that's how, just by default, that's how that happened. And that's how I survived for quite a few years. And then Stand and Deliver happened, which was, sort of unexpected. I had already started the management company when Stand and Deliver came around. So then I had to deal with that.
That changed your life in a whole nother way.
It did. It did.
Crazy
That's
people to deal with.
yeah. Yeah.
Then so so now you're acting, you're managing.
Yeah.
When when did you decide I think I want to do casting?
Well, casting happened by accident, kind of like the way that management happened, sort of by accident. Um, Management. I wound up doing that for 9 years, and each year got better and stronger, and I got better clients and more income and more established. But I had a series of setbacks in management, and I'm sure you can appreciate this. That I found that the more successful I became as a manager, and I had sort of taken a little bit of a sidestep to my own acting career because I wanted to be taken seriously as a manager. So I sort of sacrificed my own aspirations, for the 30 clients that I had. But what wound up happening, and this happened to me about 4 times, is that you would get a client, an actor, and I started off with very modest clients. A lot of them were developmental, but you'd get them to a point of success. A lot of times, maybe it was on a series, and they would be happy for about a year. And then after a year, they would become unhappy and fear would set in. The fear of like, how am I going to sustain this success? What are you doing for me today? What can I do to change things up? Or maybe I could use this as a platform to elevate myself. A lot of it is largely psychological. And so the wanting to use this, so you get somebody to a point, a success point, and then the thinking becomes, how can I use this as a platform to elevate myself even higher without you? That meant someone was going to get fired, and that meant me. And that happened to me once, it happened to me twice, 3 times. By the fourth time, I realized, oh, this is going to keep happening. I'm going to keep getting backstabbed, by clients, and they're not going to want to take me along for the ride and share, the fruits of my labor with me. And I didn't have anybody to back me up. Like the state of California wasn't going to be backing me up. The Screen Actors Guild was not going to be backing me up. So I was very much alone, and I just started to become unhappy. And now I'm like, I'm like 30, 31, 32, and I'm thinking, oh, the more successful I become, the more screwed I get. And my heart just couldn't, my heart was too soft, and I couldn't, I just couldn't take that kind of, disloyalty. And I knew it didn't have anything to do with me. It was just fear that actors were battling.
Well, and it's also actors not knowing the business,
Yeah.
having been one of those actors and learning
Yeah.
that it it's not about, this manager is going to take you there and then that
Right.
it's really about consistency, just
Yeah.
continuing to do what you do, knowing that if you do what you're supposed to do, everything will fall into place.
Yeah.
But actors get so fearful
Yeah.
because they don't take the time to learn the business.
Right.
They don't take the time to realize, hey, this is a lifelong a relationship. You and
Right.
I have a long life relationship. And when you're young, you don't understand that. You're just thinking, I got to get the next job. And you don't realize that you're hurting the people who are helping you.
Hmm.
So I'm glad we're having this discussion, because there are a lot of actors out there now, and I know actors who are our age that still jump from manager to
Yeah.
agent, and then you're
Yeah.
not doing anything. But calm the fuck down
Yeah.
is what you need
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Calm down. It's
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like, actors never take responsibility for what they're not doing,
Yeah.
and they put it on the the talent manager, the agent. It's like, what are you not doing? Maybe
Yeah.
you need to take a class. Maybe you need to up your game. It's um, you can't accuse your agent and manager. Their job is not to get you a job. Their job is just to submit you. Your job is to get you a job.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not up to you. So no matter how good you are, no matter how fabulous you are, you're not the actor they're looking for at that moment.
Yeah. It's it's tough when you put, as an actor, when you put all of your chips into one bucket, or one basket. And you're not diversified in terms of your income. And you're just depending on acting. And as we know, we have highs and we have lows, and some people can't get through the lows. And I had a client, one of my most successful clients, when I was young, put him on a series, and he had a really nice career, and he was very successful, but he also spent his money. He lived very well, and I remember always telling him, hey, you should buy yourself a condo, um, or invest in some real estate. I repeated this several times, and he never did. He just lived check to check, but exhausted it all. And sometimes, in the low times, he would need his money and also my money too. Like, he would like, hey, can I pay your commission? Can I defer your commission? It's like, well, hey, I've got bills to pay too. But he was really, successful, but just lived exhausted his means, and you have to, and didn't have any other options. And so when you live like that, times can get desperate, and when times get desperate, you start to make poor choices, and or you can't even survive. This particular client wound up leaving Los Angeles and his career altogether, which was unfortunate, because if he had just planned a little bit better, he could have. I think he got priced out of LA, but didn't have any skills to do anything else. So I've always sort of had a variety of things, a variety of income sources, and sort of spread things around. And the minute I could, I bought a place, you know. So so my place here is secure because I own land, but it took a while for that to
Who
happen.
taught you to have other streams of income? Who was the person who gave you that information?
It was something that I learned from my parents, because my dad is a businessman, but he has a variety of businesses, a whole lot of different ones. That's why I didn't even blink when I'm like 22 years old and thinking, oh, I'll start my own company, because my dad had many of them. So I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And that's why I think I had the gumption to have my own phone line when I was 13, and to call people and say, hey, I want to start a business, and I want you to be part of it. you know I guess I just learned that through observation. My dad is very enterprising, and my mom was always there with him, beside him. you know um so I guess I just learned it
Because I think that's
that way.
a really important. I mean, I say this to actors all the time. I think it's really important for you to have different
Yeah.
streams of income,
Yeah.
because like right now during the actors strike,
Right.
how are you making money?
Yeah.
How do you keep
How do you
yourself
survive? Yeah.
going
Yeah.
that it doesn't hurt your heart, or it doesn't cause you to do something stupid that could really harm you down the line.
Yeah.
you know uh, I, I I'm sure, just as you have seen it, I have seen actors make very poor choices because it wasn't even that they didn't have skill sets. They didn't want anything else,
Prideful.
because I
It's
think
yeah, they're
that's
too
the
prideful, yeah.
big thing, because you can do all kinds of stuff. And today, unlike when we started, there were not many things you could do to make money in Los Angeles other than wait tables or be a
Yeah.
bartender. There
Right.
there weren't a lot of flexibility jobs.
Hmm.
Today you could start a business on the internet, you can
Yeah.
sell merchandise. I mean, there's so many things you can do to have other streams of income. So there's no reason why actors shouldn't have more than one stream of income besides their acting career.
Yeah.
So
Don't yeah.
I think that's a wonderful thing that you brought up, because that's where actors get in trouble. First of all, they think that acting is a get rich quick job. It's like magic. I'm going to be a star and my life is going to change, and they don't see it as a business. You got to grow it, you got to nurture it, you have to respect it, and you have to learn how to put money aside. We as actors, we're not taught that. We're not taught. We're taught, get in the character, do the character, but
Right.
when it comes to money, you're not really
Practical
taught
matters,
how to
yeah.
handle it, unless you have a family like yours that had certain things in place. This is how
Hmm.
you do this. This is how you do that. Um, you know, and one thing that I've learned, and I'll share this because it's been on my mind, that the successful actors I knew when I was starting were very frugal. It wasn't that they were cheap, but they understood that it was feast or famine.
Hmm.
So they knew how to go to the thrift stores to get their pieces for auditions or for events. They wouldn't go to the regular department store. They also knew how to shop for food at places where, like, I found out about Trader Joe's from my friend Louisa Lashin, who was a big save monster. She
Yeah.
was not giving money to anybody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she taught me how to go to
How to shop.
these special secondhand events that you could take your pillowcase, go there, pack it all up, and for $50 you had a wardrobe for 6 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I learned a lot from people like her, and just actors who they didn't have a a job other than acting, but what they did was they figured out how to go and be a reader for a casting director,
Hmm.
go and do walla, do
Hmm.
voiceovers. Like, they were able to just broaden their whole acting ability.
Yeah.
So I think this is amazing. So now you get into, so now you are disappointed.
Yeah.
These
So
people have
yeah.
fucked you over, and you are
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. So
So
I was ready for a change, and just by sheer accident, a very good friend of mine was a playwright, a budding playwright. He was an actor, and there was this script that he had written, and I knew the script because I knew the story. Um, and then all of a sudden, like a year and a half later, it's being produced at a waiver house, in LA. And one day he called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in casting this play?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I still had my management company. um, so I got to, he introduced me to the director, who is the artistic director as well. um, I cast this show, and it was a great experience, and it really kind of saved me creatively. It saved me, it saved my soul. It allowed me to be, and I realized, oh, all this selling that I've been doing of actors, agenting and managing, it's creative but very limited. and it wasn't exactly feeding my soul. And it was limited because you're limited by the clients that you have. So if you have 30 clients and you're trying to match actors to roles on a breakdown on paper, you know, and this is all you've got to pull from, it's very limited. But when I went into casting, now I'm using my vision. Now I'm interpreting characters that are on a page. Now I'm collaborating with another artist, a director who has a vision. And based on my knowledge of actors, based on my knowledge of the characters, um, I can sort of come up with this vision that I think that is appropriate, and then I can, which is like a puzzle, and then I can begin to assemble all the puzzle pieces to put it together. And I had no restrictions in terms of my own client list. Now I had access to a bunch of client lists. Now I had access to a whole community, but you know, it's limited. It's that has its limitations too, because agents and managers, they don't want to know about your equity waiver play. They don't even want to talk to you about any equity waiver play because there's nothing in it for them. And then, you know, the community of actors, a lot of them don't want to be doing, you know, theater either, you know, but some of them do. I did this play, it went well. I actually wound up winning a Dramalogue award for it,
Wow.
for casting this play, which was really great affirmation. And then that led to another play, and that led to another play, and then I just did show after show after show for about 2 years, and then and so that was really great training for me, and it was creatively, it saved me, and I got to play with actors, I got to collaborate with actors, but I was no longer financially entangled with them. I wasn't dependent on their salary to pay my salary.
How did you transition then? It was that the period you transitioned from management? You just
It
like
was
let it
slow.
go?
It was a very slow process. It took me a couple of years to disengage from management because when you're a manager, your clients are kind of like your children, and you can't just like close up shop one day and say bye. um, I had to very it took me a long time to psychologically and emotionally close shop. So I had to sort of, you know, downsize that list a little bit at a time. It took time to do. But then I made the I knew that I would have to make a big leap of faith into film and television. I couldn't continue into theater because, you know, I didn't want to be the theater casting director of LA. I knew I needed somebody to find somebody to mentor me into film and TV. And by sheer luck, I met Robin Nassif socially at an event.
And Robin Nassif was a big casting director at ABC.
She was. She had
Mm.
been head of comedy casting for many, many years. So she was the executive in charge of comedy. But now she was about to leave the network, and she had a pilot, a sitcom pilot to cast for ABC, and she was looking for an assistant. And wouldn't you know, I was looking for a job. Robin hired me, and I became her assistant, and we did this pilot called Dads. It was for ABC. It was a really good sitcom. Mark Ganzel was the producer of it. Lynn Schemmel was our director, really great director. And we cast, you know who we cast? Rue McClanahan.
Oh,
This was
wow.
her first. This was her first job after having left Golden Girls.
Wow.
Was doing our pilot, and the pilot didn't get picked up, so it was just a pilot and never made it to series. But I really liked Robin quite a lot, and I was like, oh, I could see myself with this person for a long time. So when that pilot didn't get picked up and didn't go, she went to go work for Mary Jo Slater and couldn't take me with her. So suddenly I'm out of a job. So now I've got to go work for other casting directors. I think my next job was working with Joel Thurm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I worked with Joel on a
Was
pilot.
this after he left Universal?
Yes, yes. After he had been at Universal on NBC, I believe. So we did this pilot, this really great pilot called The Lot, which was about a studio lot in the 40s, and it got picked up to series, which was really great. I worked for Judith Weiner. That
God
was
bless her.
amazing.
Yes.
Yep, she was terrific. I worked for Fern Ornstein and Susie Glicksman. Who else did I work for? Oh, Vicky Rosenberg.
Oh,
I worked
wow.
for Vicky Rosenberg. Vicky Rosenberg. I remember I was Vicky had three pilots that she was casting all at the same time. She brought me in to help her on all of them, but one in particular was a UPN pilot, and she was really concentrated on the others. I was on all of them, but the UPN one was really sort of I was more my focus. And Vicky was she was a good casting director, but she was tough. You know, everyone has their own style, but their own tone and their own energy. And Vicky was just intimidating, you know. And I remember thinking every day that I would drive to work, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get fired today. Today is going to be my last day. I just know I'm going to get fired for whatever reason, you know. I was always on pins and needles, you
Oh
know.
Lord.
And I had my own little office, you know. She had her office. We had a great assistant who was fantastic. But I just, oh man, I was sure I was going to get fired. Well, I never got fired. And of the three pilots that we worked on simultaneously together, the one that I worked on was the one that got picked up the series. So
Wow.
I felt really good about that. And you know what's interesting is that pilot, it was a sitcom pilot. It starred Julie Haggerty, and I remember when we were casting Julie's husband. By the time we had narrowed down all our choices and we're going to the network, we had two actors that we were taking to the network, and they were a wonderful character actor named Cliff Bemis, who I liked quite a lot, and another actor who was, you know, kind of, you know, a good actor, you know, not that well known. His name was Bryan Cranston. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, but
Never.
we took both of them to the network. They both read, you know, with Julie. They were both really great options. The network went with Cliff Bemis. So I was really good friends with Brian. Used to work for years, was represented by a manager named Leonard Grant, and I was friends with Leonard Grant. He was not a young man. He was one of the old school guys, but he was a really nice fellow. That was kind of a bummer to have to call, you know, Leonard Grant and say, hey, you know, Brian didn't get this pilot. But you know what Brian did get? It's probably better that he didn't get our show, because we might have ruined his career, because he went on to get a show called Malcolm in the Middle. I don't know if you've ever
Right.
heard of it or not, but and then his career took off. So you know, sometimes not only do we make careers by hiring actors, but we also make careers by not hiring actors, because we could have really derailed the journey of somebody wonderful like Bryan Cranston. So I worked with, you know, some really great casting directors and learned quite a lot. And then Robin and I reunited maybe like 3 years later. She called me and she said, hey, I want to take a staff job at this place that was doing, the internet was starting to sort of take off, and there was a place that was doing programming for young people, kind of like MTV but for the internet. And she said, do you want to come be on staff with me? And I was like, yeah, okay. So we did that job, and we reunited, and and then that job led to a couple of other jobs. But then we got a pilot for Comedy Central. This was going to be pivotal. So we did this comedy pilot for Comedy Central that was written by and starred Julie Brown, comedian Julie Brown. We did a great job, Robin and I, and we had so much fun working with Julie. And then the pilot got picked up to series, and then we got to do the series, me and Robin. So I went from I had been Robin's assistant, and then I became her associate. And then when this pilot went to series, by now I'm her associate, but when it went to series, uh, Robin made me her partner. And
Wow.
so I had really moved all the way up, you know, from the bottom up to being Robin's partner. And we had so much fun doing this series. And when we first started, we were over at CBS Radford, and then our offices moved over to that studio on Las Palmas, Hollywood Central
Raleigh.
Studios.
Oh,
Hollywood
okay.
Central, yeah, and we had so much fun, Robin and I. I remember we would get the scripts, the weekly scripts, and we had desks opposite each other that faced each other that we pushed together, and I would sit and I would read the scripts, because we had to, you know, we were no longer casting the series regulars. Now we're casting the guest stars week to week, and I would read the scripts aloud, and Robin and I would just howl with laughter, and and we're breaking down we're writing down all the new roles, and we had just so much fun working on that show.
So okay, you worked with Robin,
Yeah,
but you also worked with Shayna
Shayna,
Landsberg.
correct. Yeah,
You have had, and some other people. You have
yes,
had very successful partnerships
yeah,
with women
yeah,
in casting.
right. Hmm.
What do you think your success hinged on?
Well, with Robin, started ground up, and she and I have, to this day, we're very good friends, and we just have chemistry with each other. And she was very patient with me the entire time that Robin and I were together, which was, I think, like 8 years. Only one time did I ever get mad at Robin. I mean, it was a really light and breezy, association. She was very patient. Again, it comes down to the tone. Everyone's got their own style. Like Judith Weiner, she was really good at her job, but in the room, she was kind of cool. She was not warm and fuzzy. I'm more of the warm and fuzzy type. She was a little more distant. A little more analytical. Um, Joel Thurm is just he's very good. He's a very bold and strong opinion, and he will say things sometimes that maybe you should edit. But so everyone has their quirks and in their own style. So Shayna and I lived very close geographically to each other. So that was sort of a nice plus. And at first, when we first started working together, she brought me on to help her cast some. We did a pilot and we did some TV movies. She was a little cool in the beginning, and then there was a period of separation, and then I had a movie to cast that I got on my own, and she wanted to do movies, and she liked indies. This was a cool indie movie, and I called her and I said, "Hey, would you like to work on this with me?" And she said yes, and then that led to something else, and then we just started sharing stuff, and then we became, I was no longer her associate. I was now, we became, partners, and started sharing everything, and we warmed up to each other. I've also been lately collaborating with Jeff Gerard. Jeff Gerard is very warm. If you have ever had,
Yes, yes, lovely
the
man.
yeah, he's a
Yes.
wonderful person, very warm, really supportive. He had been an actor himself before, but he's just, he's really warm and fuzzy. He's like a teddy bear, and so yeah, I had a wonderful time, collaborating with him as well. So I don't
So
know,
let
it's
me ask
just,
you a question.
yeah,
Because the two women were casting directors. They
correct,
they weren't actors. Now you
right,
collaborate with a casting director who had been an actor like
yeah,
yourself.
correct.
So how is that different? Because I'm assuming it's very different when you have two former actors who are casting actors. Their heart is different.
It's real warm and it's real empathic. It's real sympathetic to the actors. It's like chocolate chip cookies and milk. It's just smells real good in here, and it's real cozy. And it's just real comfy cozy. It's just,
Yeah.
that's what the difference is. Not that the others aren't,
No, but it's a
but
different thing because
it's
you
it's a
guys
different
have,
vibe.
right, you also know the language of the actors.
It's a
You
different
know,
vibe.
you
Yeah,
you know the heartache. You've been
yeah,
there, you've
yeah.
experienced it. So it's
Right.
you feel for them.
Yeah,
So yeah, no,
absolutely.
I just want to say one quick thing that I know about you, which is you are an easygoing person.
Yeah,
That for someone to piss you off, for
yeah,
somebody to get on your bad side,
yeah.
it has to have been so bad
It's
because
pretty bad. Yeah,
you're very chill.
yeah,
So um so going back to my original question of the secret, or what is that thing that allows you to partner with people and have a long career with them? Because in this business, going back to what we were talking about earlier, people are always looking to get to
Correct. Right.
the next
Right.
thing. I mean, it's not just
Right.
actors, it's producers, it's
Hmm.
everybody, you know.
Right.
It's a bad habit
Yeah.
of people wanting to go over you to get to the other person.
Correct.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Right.
I used you already, now I'm gonna
Yeah.
go wherever I can. But you have really maintained relationships.
Hmm.
What do
Yeah.
you think that, where does that come from?
I'll tell you. You're looking for a
I want an
reveal.
answer.
You
Yes.
want you want to know what the secret is, and you know what? I'll tell you. It is respect. It comes down to a successful relationship has to have a foundation of respect, mutual respect. And that's the only thing that sets me off is when that goes out the window. I'm always very respectful of people. But when somebody disrespects me in some way, or is disloyal or unfair or unthoughtful or selfish, it's not respectful. So I've had mutual respect with everyone that I've worked for. Whether there's been a couple that have been maybe not as nice, but I still respect them. And so respect is something that I think is that we have to really learn. And I think we've gotten away from that, and that causes when that isn't there, it causes war. There's chaos without respect. There can be no peace without respect. So for me, that's a lesson that I learned in my own sort of journey, and it's something that I place very high on my list of priorities, really high.
You can disagree without disrespecting.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
That, I think that's another thing. You can disagree, you can have a difference of opinion
Yeah,
without disrespecting the other person, you
right.
know, which is something we don't see today.
Yeah, no, it's
We
really
get on
hard.
social media and we go off on people that we've never met,
Hmm.
and it's like, you don't even know me, what's wrong
Yeah,
with you?
yeah.
So I think that's a very important component for people in the business to really understand how much respect means, how
Hmm.
how it is necessary if you want to establish a long career.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
very necessary. So thank you for that. That
you're
was
welcome.
good.
Yeah, good.
That was a bonus.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good. Yeah.
Um, what are some tips? I'm gonna pivot just a little bit. What are some tips that you can give actors regarding cold readings? I know we're doing a lot of self tapes,
Yeah,
but I think also in self tapes they do the same mistakes as they do in cold readings.
yeah,
Are there a couple of things that you go, oh, there we go again, that you can say, don't, you know, don't do this, or, you know,
yeah.
stay away from this?
Well, cold readings are kind of old school and kind of old fashioned, and we don't tend to really do cold readings that often. The only time I ever asked an actor to cold read was when they were pre-reading for me, and I felt by their presence and their energy that they could be right, maybe still for this role, but you know what? I've got another role that you could be maybe even better, that maybe even suits you even better. And then I'd go and I'd get sides and I'd say, hey, do you mind just going outside and taking 10 minutes with this, and let me just try and see if this fits you, if this role suits you. That's kind of like the only time that we really actually do cold reads. um, and then you've got to the actor has to, like, pivot out of what they were doing into this new role. But if I'm going to ask you to cold read something, it's probably that this one suits you better, so it should be it's that shouldn't be a problem. But having to make good choices on the fly, on the quick. um If you're ever in that situation where somebody asks you to read something without a lot of prep time, if they say 10 minutes, take 20 minutes. If they say 15 minutes, you can always say, do you mind if I study this for a night and come back tomorrow? You could always do that. But if time is of the essence and there is no time to schedule you tomorrow, then take that 20 minutes and just make some good, strong choices. The worst thing that you can do in audition land is to come in and be bland. It's just, and it's sometimes hard to know that you're being bland. And being bland is when, I think I was guilty of it when I was a young actor, but I just didn't realize, um, is to just do exactly what's on the page and nothing else. And that's fine, but we're in Los Angeles, and we're not in some small town, in the middle of the country, where they maybe the acting community is small, and they have to put up with bland. They have to make bland work. We're in LA. We don't, the standards, the bar, you have to realize, is way up here. It's not down here, where we think it might be. It may be that a lot of actors come in and sort of default to an interpretation that's obvious on the page, but there's going to be one actor or two actors or three actors who come in and go deeper, who are doing more than just what's on the page, who have more detail in their interpretation, who have more depth to them. They're doing the dialogue, but then they're also doing the nooks and crannies that are in between. I never knew that when I was auditioning as an actor. As a young actor, I think I don't even think I would memorize back then, but I would go in and just do exactly what was on the page, and we think that that was enough. But when I went into casting, I realized, oh, that's not nearly enough, because somebody's going to come in and they're going to absorb that character and communicate that character, interpret that character, and execute that character in a way that has ownership to it. And it's almost like it's like set ready. And what I mean by set ready is like you could put them on the set and you could light them and you could wardrobe them and dust them off and yell action, and they're ready to shoot it right now. And there's always actors who come in and are that good that fast with a character. And in casting, if all you have to do is just go, oh, that guy. Yeah. So, there's, actors that you just come in and they have all the detail fleshed out, in the character. And this character just suits them on a deeper, more meaningful level. And if you're a director and you've heard 20 people, do this dialogue, and there's always going to be three that just you go, wow, they really know this really well, or this part really suits them for some reason, or maybe they've played this kind of character before because they really just nail it. And then the people that nail it, they've raised the bar up here. And then you've just got to choose from up here, because you've got three choices and any one of them are going to be great. And that's kind of what casting winds up being. So you just don't want to fall into like the normal average kind of
So in
interpretation.
self tape,
Yeah.
you made some fantastic points. When you're delivering the material, you should be ready to your performance, because it's a performance you're
It is a
giving.
performance. Yeah.
It should be ready for set.
Absolutely. You want to tell the director, this is my interpretation, this is how I see it, and this is how you should, how I would execute it, on, tomorrow. It's got to be like, it's got to be that quick, it's got to be that. There's no, here's the thing, there's very little room for work in progress. I think when we were auditioning, like in the 80s, remember you used to get your sides and you didn't have to memorize them. You could hold your sides and they'd say, don't put your sides down. Create the illusion of a work in progress, something that's going to get even better. That was sort of like old school. Well, that doesn't apply today. Today, you pretty much even though they say you don't have to be off book. I
You
think
have to be off
you
book.
have to be off book, because if you're not off book, then I'm seeing two people up there. I'm seeing the character when you're doing the dialogue, but then I'm seeing the actor who doesn't know his lines, who's looking at his next line when he should be present and reactive to the other character opposite him.
I think that's
So,
the thing with self tape. And I think that's the misnomer is that people think they can read. When you're
no,
doing self tape, you have to
you have to
perform.
perform.
They don't want, they're looking at what, how many tapes do you get for one breakdown?
Yeah, a lot. I mean,
Hundreds? Uh,
well, not hundreds, but I'm going to invite maybe 50, or 60. Maybe 10 will fall out. Then I get 50 that I've got to whittle down to maybe 10, and then from there it's going to narrow it down even further. So yeah, there's no work in progress, is what I'm trying to tell you. You have to be like performance ready, performance level. And that means being present and reactive to the other character when you have no dialogue, because you do have dialogue. It's just,
right.
it's
It's
just,
nonverbal.
it's nonverbal.
That's right.
And if you're missing that part, and if you're going blank and you're not reacting, then you're missing half your performance. It's just, half of your performance is verbal and the other half is nonverbal. And I think the half that's nonverbal is actually the more interesting of the two.
That's right. And a lot of editors will defer to the nonverbal
It,
version of the actor a
it's
lot of times
yeah,
because they
it's
go, they're more interesting than the
yeah,
actor who's
they are.
talking.
Yeah,
So let me
absolutely.
see what they're giving me.
Yeah,
And I think actors don't understand that because it's not just your performance in giving it, but when it goes to the editor, that
yeah,
editor is going to make certain cuts and certain
yeah,
choices,
yeah,
and you want to always be all you always want to be there.
yeah. Present and
That's
reacting.
right, no matter
Yeah,
what, so that
yeah,
they feel compelled to cut to you.
yeah, sure.
Even when somebody else is talking
I think
and
it'd
you
be
see
really
this.
interesting to have a roundtable with editors and
Yes,
have their perspective on performance, because they have a lot to do with, which they're the ones that are making the decision.
that's right.
This reminds me of, when you and I were young. Grr. and we did this movie together, this little movie. I don't know if you've heard of it, Stand and Deliver. Um, one of my favorite scenes in that movie is the scene. There was a day where we got to work with Andy Garcia. I think it was just one day. And it's a scene where it's you and I and Will Gote and Carla Montana and Ingrid Oliu and Vanessa Marquez. Riff Hutton is in it. And it's a confrontation scene. And it's a scene about, our being accused of cheating. And
Cheating.
it's a very quiet scene. And Andy has a lot of dialogue. And this is my favorite scene for me as an actor, because I get to add a little bit of dimension to my character. But you're in it, and I've seen this movie so many times because there's always a screening of it. Um, but this is my favorite scene, not just for me, but it's my favorite scene for all of us. And like, you're in it, and I very vividly remember you, Lydia, in this scene, because he's like, Andy Garcia pushes his seat up and he's like all up in your grill, and you're not saying a word. You don't have any verbal dialogue, but you are reacting, and you're very still, and there's a tone to your body language, and he's trying to get to what he thinks is the truth, and he's trying to manipulate it, out of our characters, and nobody's giving anything up. And I just think, and I look at this, I've seen this scene so many times, and I think this is a really good scene because there's a lot of subtext in it. There's a lot of text. It's very text heavy, but what's more interesting is what the characters aren't saying. And we're not saying a whole lot until later on the scene. As the scene gets going, there's sort of a big comedic payoff, at the end. But I love when he's all up in your face. And because the purpose of stories is to get to the truth. The actor's job is to make those discoveries, those truth discoveries along the way, and the auditioning actor has to make choices, that are compatible with the character, that drive the story forward. And sometimes, the larger characters, the more important the character is, the more dimensions he has. Sometimes if a character is just a featured character, maybe just one line, sometimes a line is just a line, and there might not be a lot of dimension to it. Your purpose is just to you know to to communicate some information, and then that's it. But if you are a major character, you can't forget the lines between the lines, because those are often the better lines. And the reason they're better than the lines themselves is because that is where the truth is. The truth, it lies in between the lines, because um, that's what stories is. We start off with the conflict, we start off with the problem, and the whole story is a journey to get to the truth. And if it's a drama, the truth unfolds a little bit at a time, and the characters in the beginning are don't want to tell the truth. They don't want to reveal the truth for reasons that are protecting themselves or their characters. So everyone's really tight with the truth, especially if you love crime drama, or if you love any of the procedurals, like Law and Order, SVU. At the top, it's every show is the same. Every show starts, there's a murder, somebody's died, and then the detectives come in and they're trying to figure it out, with clues and forensics. And when they think they've put the story together, then they've got to convince a DA. And if the DA is convinced, then he's going to take it to trial and try and convince a jury that somebody is guilty and responsible, for it. And so we're little by little, the truth begins to like come out. It starts to seep out a little bit at a time until the end. And then usually there's a big reveal at the end and a big resolution, and then we can fade to black. But then sometimes you think you know the truth, and they have found somebody, you know innocent. How what say you? We find the defendant not guilty, and then we're going to finish the story. We're fading out to black, and then the camera pans to the person, and they give you this look, and you go, oh my god, she did it, she killed her husband, she just got away with murder, oh my god. And then we're out, and it's the show, and that's what makes it so good.
That-
But the truth is, what I love about the lines between the lines is that's that's where the truth is, and don't forget that, because that's where the real story is.
and I want to ask you about script analysis. That
Yeah,
this is lovely to go into script analysis and how
yeah,
important it is for an actor to be
hmm,
able to break down the script, to
yeah,
be able to go dig in, to get those nooks and crannies that you
yeah.
talked about.
Right.
You started teaching script analysis.
I did. I sort of, when I went into casting, there was one of my favorite projects that Robin and I worked on was a pilot for NBC and for Kelsey Grammer. It was a sitcom pilot that Kelsey was producing. And there was a role, we had a matriarch in the story. And so we had a lot of actresses that came in to audition for it, and a lot of stars came in to audition for it. They needed a job, so they would come in and actually read, for the producers and the director. And I was reading off. I was always the reader, so I was always reading opposite, all the actors. But I remember one day, I remember thinking to myself, after, because you pre-read actors, you bring actors straight into the producers, you bring in stars, go straight to the producers. So you're seeing a wide variety of types of actors, levels of careers that are coming in to audition for you. But I remember specifically one day when we had had a lot of stars come in to read. I remember thinking to myself, I had this epiphany, and I remember it very clearly. I don't remember who the actor was that got me to that epiphany. I think it was a conglomerate of many, but I remember thinking to myself, oh, oh, no wonder they're stars. And I thought, oh, well, because here's the thing, what I realized is that stars, when stars come in to audition, like everybody else, their auditions are always the best. I never realized that before. But stars always give the best auditions. They're always the funniest. They're always the most thoughtful. They're always the most emotional. They're always the nooks and crannies are always there. The backstory is there. The detail is there. The texture is there. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's where the bar is. I had no idea when I was an auditioning actor that that's where I could go with this role. I had no idea that that was my gift. I had no idea that I had permission to do that, because these stars are basically come in and they're with their auditions, they're doing the director's work for him. They're making it real easy for him. They're doing it all on their own. So if a director wants to be really lazy, he can just go, yeah, that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and then that's really what casting is casting the perfect actors. But the perfect actors are usually, the ones that give the perfect auditions, and stars tend to always give perfect auditions. And that was a big moment for me as a young casting director. And so I started to observe and sort of started to analyze what was present in their auditions that made it different from Joe Schmo's audition. And I was able to sort of deconstruct these elements, which I call dimensions, which I think need to be present in a successful audition. And it's this is something I never learned this in my own acting classes. No one ever told me this. I really only sort of learned it by observation, by collaboration, and by listening and keeping my eyes open. And I had a great seat because I'm always the reader opposite them. But I think that a great performance comes down, there's this thing I gave it a name. I call it the holy trinity of performance. And there are three dimensions that have to be present in a good performance all at once. Okay, so here is my version of the Holy Trinity. You know what the Holy Trinity is, right?
No, go ahead.
Well, what's the Holy Trinity in general?
Well, it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Exactly. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Right. But in acting, it's a little bit different. This is my version of the Holy Trinity. So, you ready?
Yeah.
I'm gonna spill the tea. Okay, so here
Give
it
it
is.
to us.
I'm gonna give it to you because I know you've been chomping for it.
I've been
Okay,
waiting
so
for
I
years
know.
for this.
I know. Okay, so this is my version of the Holy Trinity. Okay. So there's three dimensions. So the first dimension is this is a layer that we're all familiar with. Um, this is where we start our performance, but a lot of us tend to end our performance there too. And if you do that, then you're going to wind up with this very sort of one-dimensional performance. This layer is called text, Text. So I'm going to ask you, Lydia, in terms of a story, what is, in terms of a performance, let's just define text. What is it?
It's the material that um, kind of is your guidepost.
Okay.
It's where you're starting.
Yeah. Okay. What else? Another
It
definition?
informs you of the characters, of relationships, of
Yeah.
location,
Yeah.
of
It's information.
yeah, it's
Okay.
just information.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else that you want to add?
No, I think
Okay. Okay. Here's my definition of text. Text is verbal dialogue. It is written dialogue. It's communication. It's words on a page if it's sides, or in the air if we're in a and if it's two people, humans communicating with each other. It's words that flow back and forth between us. That is what text is. I call this dimension, this layer, the gift of the writer. Why? Because the writers, this is what the writers get paid for. They get paid for the characters that they create, the situations that they place them in, and more importantly, the dialogue, the text that flows back and forth between them. Okay? Those great
Mm-hmm.
lines, those
Mm-hmm.
those funny lines that make us laugh or make us think or make us relate or make us cry, or more importantly, that remind us that we're not alone, that's great dialogue. And so this is what the writers get paid for, and that's why they're on strike, and that's why they deserve to get everything that they're asking for, because this is the stuff of great stories. Is it all begins with great dialogue. Okay, so your performance as an actor begins with the text, but you don't want it to end there. Okay, now underneath all good text, here's where the second dimension comes in, is another layer. This is a little bit elusive because it's not that obvious. If you've got sides, I see, oh, interior, exterior, I see setting, I see characters, I see dialogue, but this other layer isn't always on the page. So it's a little secretive. Underneath all good text is this dimension of, what do you think?
Subtext.
Subtext, absolutely. And let's define subtext. If text is written dialogue, verbal dialogue, what is subtext?
For me, it would be what's going on with the character, with my character that I didn't see, but I am filling it in. I'm I'm bringing in my own little story that's going to give
Backstory.
me yeah, that's going to give me a a relationship,
Yeah.
because
I'm
I
gonna
could
I'm
read.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna simplify
Okay.
your response. Remember, text is verbal dialogue, written dialogue. Subtext is non-verbal dialogue. That's a real simple definition for what it is. It's what we mean when what we say isn't all that we mean. Does that make sense? It's a
Yes,
little bit of a,
a
yeah.
great example of that has always stayed with me is Al Pacino in Al Pacino, where he played the lawyer. Oh my goodness, I can't. It was him and Jack Warden, and he has a scene with this transvestite,
Uh huh.
and the lines are kind of innocuous,
Uh huh.
but what he put in it,
Yeah.
it was like, whoa!
Yeah.
It was
There's
just
Yeah. It's when we speak as humans, there's always two conversations that are happening. There's the top one, the obvious one, the one that we verbalize, and then there's the one underneath that we're not verbalizing. Why aren't we verbalizing it? Well, because it could be uncomfortable to verbalize it. The setting may not be correct. The timing may not be correct for us to reveal these secrets or this truth. It may be too sensitive.
it could
We
get
may
us
not be.
killed.
It could get us killed. We have to be discreet, but that doesn't mean that it isn't present. It's there. It's just not ready to come out yet. So that is subtext. It's nonverbal dialogue. It's what we mean, what we really mean. And as actors, as characters, at the beginning of a story, we're going to hold on to the truth. We're not ready. Not everyone's ready to spill the truth. We're going to have to warm up to it, and we're not going to get to that until like 35 minutes into the show.
The movie is And Justice for All. That is a great movie of subtext throughout. I mean, there's a lot of them, but that's a
Yeah,
where you
I'm gonna
see
I'm gonna watch
subtext.
it tonight.
Yeah.
And Justice for All. I'm writing that down. But yeah, those are the great actors. The Robert De Niro's, the Al Pacinos. The Merrills. The Sallys. These are the wonderful actors that
Al
really
Pacino
know
and Robert Redford, Al
Robert De
Pacino
Niro
and Robert De Niro in Heat
in Heat.
when they
Sure.
meet. When
Yeah,
they
it's the
meet.
the dinner,
Oh
the
my
dinner,
God!
the dinner
How
conversation.
crazy
Yeah,
was that?
yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, and between the lines. It's a scene of dialogue, but it's really a scene of lines between the lines. And there's respect in that scene, and there's or
Admiration.
there's hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's plotting. There's anticipation. It's a great scene. So subtext is really the gift of the actor. Why? Because, well, in a shooting script for a film or a TV show, there's no room for the writer to insert the inner thoughts of the character, because subtext is inner monologue. there's just no room practically to put it on, on the page. Otherwise, each a sitcom script is going to be about 30 pages, and that's probably too long. A movie script is, 90 pages to 100 pages. um, so it gets taken out for practical purposes, but just because it gets omitted practically doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve to be put back in. It should. And a good example of that is, I learned a lot about comedy from my association from Robin, and I started to really study sitcoms. But um, Everybody Loves Raymond. I've seen every single episode of Everybody Loves Raymond multiple times. Those actors are really good at executing their dialogue and getting to a place. The dramatic actor has the time and the space to get to where he needs to be. The comedic actor has to do the same thing organically, but faster. And that's a real challenge for the comedic actor. But you see actors, in great casts like Everybody Loves Raymond. All those actors are so skilled, at getting there organically. King of Queens, the same thing. Those actors are so good at getting there in an organic way, so that they're not just delivering text. There's subtext, and a lot of times the comedy comes from the subtext, the reaction, the nonverbal conversation, which is much more interesting. Okay, so we have text and we have subtext. Now the third dimension that drives both of these levels is something that we're all guilty of, but we don't even tend to think about it that much. And as actors, we really need to pay attention to it. And this is a dimension called motive. Motive, motive, motive. What is motive? Motive is, well, you want to take a stab at it? What's motive
Your
in a story?
your objective, what you want,
Yeah,
what you want from that character,
yeah.
that's the driving
Your
train. It's the
drive.
drama. It's the
Yeah,
drama.
yeah.
If you don't have motive, you have no you
You
have
have nothing.
no
You're not
action.
going anywhere, right? You're not.
You
You're
just
you're
have
still. You're
words.
Yeah. So motive, a really great definition for motive, a simple definition for motive and story is the reason why. And as characters, as humans, we are just these walking, talking masses of reasons why. And your job as an actor is to figure out motive for your character in the pages that you've been given. So if you have 3 pages of sides, then your job is to break down that scene and figure out motive for your character and in those particular pages. And then once you have figured out what your character wants or needs, and more importantly, why, then you can start to memorize the dialogue. Because now you're adding that silent story underneath it. You're layering in that subtext because you've identified what your character needs or wants, and more importantly, why in that scene. If these answers elude you, and you just go start memorizing dialogue, I guarantee that your interpretation is going to come off one dimensional. It's going to come off bland.
And good acting teachers tell you not to memorize the lines before you know the piece. Good acting
Correct.
teachers
Right.
will tell
So
you
yeah.
do not
Otherwise,
memorize
right.
until you know everything you need to know.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're doing it backwards, and I think a lot of people tend to rush to the dialogue and memorize lines first and figure out character later. And I think that's a little bit backwards. I would figure out the character first and then memorize dialogue, because the dialogue is going to take on a much different meaning to you. It's going to be much more has have it'll have much more depth to it. Um, because one-dimensional performances don't help me as a casting director. Two-dimensional performances are okay, they're better. But when an actor is three-dimensional all at once, when they're doing the dialogue plus the reactions, plus I see little flashes of backstory, of need or hope or want, whether it's light or it's dark, that's interesting. That's that's three-dimensional. And now, you know that's something I can work
Now,
with.
let me
That's
ask you something,
Yeah.
because this was a question I had before, but sometimes you have parts that come in the script where the character is delivering exposition.
Yes.
This was something you taught me when you were doing LA Law, the movie,
Hmm.
that um and sometimes with exposition an actor can get in trouble because they're trying to act it out when
Hmm.
it's just information.
Correct. Yeah.
That's what you taught me. you
Yeah.
you taught me it's like it's just you're just giving information. It's not, and it never
Yeah.
I never forgot that because I had never in all the acting classes I had taken before that I had never heard delivering exposition before,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah. So sometimes a line is just a line, or sometimes, a few lines are just a few lines to help move the story, along. And there may just not be room in this particular scene or this particular show for your character's backstory. If you're just, but sometimes a waiter can have one line and a beat and there's subtext in it. Yeah, every character is different. The bigger the character, the more dimension it's going to have to it. The smaller the character, the less dimension it's going to have. And you don't want to, you want to be thoughtful in your interpretations, but you don't want to slow down the scene, especially if it's comedy. um so yeah, you just it's there's an art form to it, and you can either, if you're not quite sure, you can always ask, a casting director for guidance, or a director for guidance, or you can watch the show for tone, to get an idea of how your character fits into the tone of this show.
I didn't mean to veer off
No,
from
that's
your
good.
class, which was
No, but that's
fantastic.
no, but that's
But
that's a really great question. Sometimes a line is just a line. So, but if you're going in for a guest star or something bigger, you better be three-dimensional. Um, Sometimes, a line just might be one-dimensional, and that's okay if it's just a featured player. That's all right.
so let me ask you another question. How
Mhm.
do you like to search for new talent?
Well, I'm always open for to new talent. I prefer to search for it through agents and managers. I rely on them, and their knowledge and their taste, and actors to make me aware of people that they have discovered. I go to theater a lot. Tomorrow I'm going to go see a waiver play in the afternoon, and then in the evening I'm going down to the Amundsen, to see another show. So I get out to theater. I go to showcases. I go to acting events. Yeah, I think for every casting director, the joy is not to, it's not that joyful to give a star another job, but it's really joyful to give somebody their big break, to get to Taft-Hartley somebody into the guild, or to give somebody their first guest star, or their first, main title billing, or to launch a kid that is going to has a bright future ahead of them. That's really exciting, for not just for me, but I think for all casting directors.
How different is casting kids from adults? Because you got to cast Little Rascals.
Yeah, yeah, that
You've
was fun.
cast a bunch of
Yeah,
Christmas movies,
yeah.
but is it different
It
when you're
is it is
casting
different.
kids
Yeah, it's different, because you have to see so many more actors, to find the really good ones, and the bar for adults is way up here. Do you know where the bar for kids is when you're casting kids?
here?
N- n- You would think that it's way down here, right? But actually, the bar is actually way up here. The bar
Wow.
for kids is the exact same bar as for adults, but it's just going to take you a lot longer to find kids that can aim that high and perform that high. So that's the challenge. But you know what? You always find them, and when you do, it freaks you out, but it also delights you. Like, oh my god, this kid's going to be a star. And then you think, how is that possible? How is that? How was Dakota Fanning so brilliant? In the beginning, if you watch her, in I Am Sam, I think that was her big break. It's like, how did that happen? How does that happen? You know,
And
uh,
then in Man on Fire, she was even oh. She
It's
was.
like Haley Joel Osment. How did he see dead people? That's amazing. How was he so good? Haley Steinfeld. She got nominated for an Oscar. In her breakout movie. True Grit. It's like, how does that happen? And when it happens, it's like wow.
Lightning in a bottle.
It's exciting. It's really
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you love about casting?
The discovery. Uh, Certainly, discovering, helping careers. I love the creative aspects of it, the visionary aspects of casting, because it is, when we read a novel, how you cast it in your own mind, you put a face to the characters when you read a novel, and then when you're done, your vision remains, in the book. But I do that, as a career, except my vision winds up, on the screen or on the stage. And I love that part of it.
And
I love
storytelling as a kid helped you get here.
it. Did everything that I every detour and every pit stop and every rest stop along my journey has helped me get here.
So let me ask you, what are a couple of challenges that casting directors in general deal with? Because we always hear as actors always separate themselves from casting directors. Like they're either the villain or they're the hero, but they're never the person, and they don't understand the challenges that casting directors, especially now with self tapes
Yeah,
being so commonplace,
yeah,
uh, the casting directors fighting for their career as well.
yeah.
I, in my estimation, it's because a lot of the fun as an actor is being able to go into the room, be able to meet with the casting director, be
Hmm.
able to have dialogue with feel that energy. I mean, there's nothing like going into a room and meeting with casting directors and
Yeah,
then doing your reading.
correct.
But with the self tape,
Yeah,
that part is gone.
yeah.
So
But what you do get, and let me ask you this, is uh because if you're I hear a lot of actors complain about self tapes, and I just want to be in the room again, and I miss that connection, and then I think to myself, I say to them, well, I I get wanting to be in the room, and I get that we're people, you know, um, you're a people person, but I hope that if you want to be in the room, then you better be nailing your audition on the first time, because you get one shot at it, maybe two, maybe two. So, but I know, like, if I have to do if when I've had to do a self tape, uh, I never nail it in the first time. It takes me like 6 or 7 tries to get it perfect, if you're the type that can nail it on the first one, then by all means, God bless, go into the room. But if you're not, if you're more like somebody like me that would have to warm up to it and have to like do it several times before I get it just perfect, what do you think about that?
well, I have two thoughts. I think self tape can be very good in helping you, as an actor, helping you establish to look and see where you have um, where your bad habits are. Because
Hmm.
when you are taping, you get to see your bad habits and go,
Yeah,
"Oh, I did that. Let me do it again. I don't like that."
right, right.
So I find that there is good in it, but the bad thing for me is that you don't have to force yourself to get it in the first take. And when you go out into the world, when you are on set, you got to nail that shit in the
You gotta
first
nail it.
take. You
Yeah,
can't warm up to it.
right.
And so taking it away from bringing it in the room on some level makes you lazy, because you're not, it's like, oh, I got to be on my toes. I got to be ready. I don't have another opportunity, and
Right.
and and I don't know about you, but when I was studying acting, that was ingrained in me. It's like you need to nail it on the first take.
Hmm.
First take,
Yeah.
not second, not fourth, because in television there may not be a second take. They may
Right.
go moving on.
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah,
And
we've got other people to see too.
that's right. And if you're just and this is really more for the new actors, I think, because if you're just doing under five on a TV show, they're not going to stop it for you. If you sucked and the star was great, they're moving on. They will just cut around you. So it's
Mhm.
important that you come in ready first time out.
Mhm.
First time in front of the camera, when they say action, you are there. You don't leave anything to chance. You don't leave anything on the table. You have given it all in that first scene,
Yeah,
in
you
that
gotta bring it.
first shot.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it on some levels it's wonderful that actors get to do it over and over and over again, but it's harmful at the end of the day because then they come on set and they don't know how to give it the first take.
But if you've done it over and over and over again and you get the part, then you've worked it out. Hopefully there's
Hopefully,
hopefully you've worked it,
because
and you've progressed to the point where you're performance ready.
yes, but if the
You're s-
director gives you a different note
Correct, right.
and then
Then you're gonna have to
says,
pivot.
now you got to do it the first time out,
Yeah,
you don't have that, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it's got its good and then it's got its bad, and I think at the end of the day, it's you have to train yourself to nail. Don't turn the camera on until you are ready. That means learn the line, learn the character, learn your text, learn what you have to do, so when you do turn on the camera, you are ready, you're focused, you're acting like, oh, I'm on set, I'm
yeah,
on set, I'm ready to go. And I think that's where the disconnect is sometimes. So
yeah,
anyway, that's my you got me fired up now, I'm like
yeah, yeah. I hear you. I hear you.
so
Yeah.
okay, I how has the strike affected your job?
Well, I mean, we're in it. If the actors are striking, then it's like the casting directors are striking too. So, unless you're doing theater or it's yeah. I mean, we're in it as well. So, these are critical times. I mean, the writers are in it, have 4 months in, the actors have 2 months in. Um, we're in it for the long haul. You know, here's the thing: is technology has changed everything. It's changed how we're viewing movies. So now it's created these platforms, these streaming platforms, and now there's AI that it's also created. And we have to figure this out now. We can't figure it out in the future. Otherwise, there's not going to be a job for the actors. And if there's not a job for the actors, then there's not a job for the casting directors. Um, so it's really critical. And I know, and I understand why the studios, you know, Fran called them, greedy. And yeah, she's right. They are. And they don't want to give it up. But here's the thing that I've learned through my journey of being an agent and a manager and an actor and a casting director. Here's what I've learned about Hollywood. The two most important things for success in Hollywood are the script and the cast, the writing and the acting. Everything else, all other departments, all other elements creatively are secondary. You've got to nail those two things first. So whenever was looking for to cast a project, if I didn't like the script, I would rather pass and not do it if I didn't feel like I could do a good job, or if I felt like the story wasn't going to appeal to actors and I couldn't sell it to actors or to agents or to managers, I would rather not do the job. And I've turned scripts down that I just didn't care for the story. So I have to look at it, from the way the actors do, as well. So if you can nail those two things, then you've got a shot at success. And who happens to be on strike right now? The writing and the writers and the actors. So it's really critical, and we got to stay in. And it's a painful thing to go through, but on the other side of pain is peace, and it may take us a couple more months, to get to that other side. But we got to hang in, and it's real critical.
And I think it's important. The executives have to come to terms with the fact that this is a partnership. They're not in charge. They may have the money, but if the project isn't there, they cannot multiply the money.
Yeah,
It's like the a great producer understands that.
yeah,
A great
collaboration.
business understands we need each other. if
Right.
i if i have a store, I won't have a store if the milkman doesn't deliver to my store,
Yeah.
if
Right.
the produce man doesn't bring to my store is only as good as the people that bring their products to my store.
Correct. Right.
you
The
know
artisans.
that's right. And
Yeah.
so the whole the foolishness, because it's just foolishness.
Yeah.
We're in charge and we get to say what you can do or not
Right.
do, and we're going to take away, we're going to bring IA and they're going to set the background, so we're just
Yeah.
going to take your likeness and we're going to put it all over, and then you will never get another penny. And it's
Right.
like, how stupid are you? How
I know
stupid are
it's
you
it,
at the end
it's
of the
not
day?
collaborative. It's not
No,
collaborative, is it?
no.
And what did we talk about at the very beginning of this of this dialogue? We talked about what is a good foundation for a relationship.
Respect,
Respect.
respect,
Respect. And
respect.
yeah. So we're fighting. I feel like this strike is about respect,
Yes, it
and
is. Yes, it
and
is.
collaboration and
Yes.
fairness and sharing, and yeah, without it there's chaos.
and
And
and and having act and it's all parties understanding that it is collaborative, all parties.
yeah.
I don't want to make one the bad guy, the other one the victim. All parties, because it works both ways, but it's like we work together.
Right.
A great film doesn't happen by one person. It's everybody on that project. You may have the actors in front, but those people behind, working behind the scenes, were just as valuable. The hair person, the makeup person, the
Hmm.
casting person, the script
Hmm.
supervisor, the PA, all of them. That
Yeah.
energy brought it forth. So
Yeah.
um
All
I-
those wonderful departments, but
th-
but the writers and the direct and the actors, they are the most critical and they are the most powerful, and we have to remember that the acting and the writing, they're the most powerful departments, and so that you just got to hang in.
Yes. So I have just a couple more questions.
Okay.
Um, how do you like actors submitting to you for roles?
Through their agents, or through their managers, or when I reach out to them via Actors Access directly.
And how important is actors access for you?
I use it. I use it quite a lot. I like to do. I like to work on indie projects. Sometimes I'd love to take on. I like stories, so I'm not as motivated by what they're if it's a big payday for me or not. Um, if it's a good story, whether it's small or large, I'm into it. So sometimes I reach out to the actors directly through Actors Access if the agents and the managers aren't as generous with their time or their yeah, they don't.
And
Yeah,
I've
sometimes
noticed
the
you
agents don't care about those smaller types of projects.
I've noticed you've done in your career, you've done a lot of shorts
A lot. Yeah,
that which is uh
yeah, it's fun.
that's an act of love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Because
I've yeah,
you're not getting a lot of money from it, so it's not
not a
about the
lot.
money, but
Yeah,
you have accumulated a
I've
lot
done a
of
lot.
shorts.
The
Oh,
the one short that I have that's going on right now that's active. It's going to be playing in Glendale coming up soon. I'll give you the information for it. It's a short called "The Kill Floor" that is set during the pandemic, and it has a Latin storyline. And it's going to air on PBS, on Latino Public Broadcasting. This was the producer of it, but it's been making before it airs on PBS. before it has its TV debut, they allowed it to do the film festival circuit, and it's been doing really well. And one of the great things about that project is that I was able to cast our friend Ingrid, uh, who's our
Oh,
co-star in Stand and Deliver. And I love when I can,
the
when I
best.
can cast, friends or actors who I have a personal relationship with. When I'm able to collaborate with them, that makes it even sweeter. But the
How
fact that it's doing so well, that project, it's delightful to me.
how important is it for actors to consider doing shorts?
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? They win Academy Awards. Why wouldn't you? When I was casting this project, I remember there was a one of the actors that I saw that I auditioned. I became aware of him because there was a short that got nominated for an Oscar last year, and it had Latin actors in it. And I remembered this actor in it, and I hunted him down, and I'm friends with his agent, and I had him audition. I didn't really care for his audition. I had him redo it, and then I said have him call me so I can, I want to call him back, but I want to give him notes. And I became aware of him because he was in a short that got nominated for an Oscar last year. So why wouldn't you?
I want people to know casting directors are champions for you.
We
They
absolutely are.
fight for you.
Of course.
They hunt you down.
They
They
do.
give you
They give you
the
notes.
they give you notes, and
They
there's
do.
nothing better than getting notes from casting
Yeah,
people.
they give you their
There is
cell phone number.
nothing better. No, there is nothing better than
Yeah.
having a casting director believe in you so much
Yeah.
that they take you to the side and say, okay, here's some notes. This is what you have to
Yeah.
go work on,
Yeah.
because they really believe in you. They're really wanting you to get the role.
Yeah, I really believed in this actor so much, and I wasn't seeing what I needed from him in his auditions by himself, but I kept having him do it over, and because I was friends with his agent, I said have him call me. I will give him the I can't I'd sent him written notes, but then I was like I need to communicate these verbally, so have him call me. I mean, that's I was really trying to get this guy a job.
How does being Latino inform how you help people?
How does it say that again?
How does being Latino or
Yeah,
Hispanic
yeah.
inform how you help people? Because I think we bring, as a Latino person or a
Hmm.
person of color, we
Yeah,
tend to add more.
yeah,
We champion more.
yeah. Yeah,
We're not okay with just going, oh, okay, they didn't work, let's go to the next. It's like, if we believe in you, we believe in you. You're gonna do it, damn it. You're
yeah,
gonna do this.
yeah.
So how does
There's
it inform you, with your background growing up in El Paso? How does do you find that it makes a difference for you?
probably there's an empathy there. Yeah, I think there's probably an empathy and a warmth, that comes from, maybe the culture that you can draw from or that comes forward, I think. What was interesting is, when Stand and Deliver came along for us, you and I, that was in the 80s, the mid 80s, and it was kind of an anomaly. It was a great showcase, but there really wasn't a lot for there wasn't diversity wasn't a thing yet, and so there wasn't, while it was a great showcase, there wasn't, like, for me as an actor, there wasn't a lot for me to go into. There was the stuff that was out there was pretty caricature, very stereotypical, not the kind of thing that I would fit into or would even be interested in, in doing. So the timing wasn't right, I feel like, for me. I don't know how you feel about it, but now the timing is, now it's different. Diversity is very much a thing now. So, but it took a long time for that to
Well,
happen.
I think part of it is because of the chiseling away, the over the years, like people banging on the doors,
Yeah,
nosotros,
yeah,
and you had films like La Bamba and Stand and
yeah,
Deliver and Colors, and you had stuff that was like, we're not going away,
yeah,
we're not going away. So, and then God bless her, Jennifer Lopez
yeah,
started to open doors. You had Jimmy Smits that started opening doors with NYPD Blue, and and LA Law,
Hmm.
and Stephen Bochco, the best. He was his company was MTM, and then Stephen Bochco Productions. They were very influential in opening doors
Hmm.
for people of color, not just
Hmm.
in front of the camera, but behind the camera. Stephen Bochco was hiring uh, blacks and Latinos as directors when
Hmm.
nobody else was taking the chance. So I think all those years of just pushing and pushing and
Right.
pushing, now we have tremendous opportunities.
Yeah.
Now we have it still needs to improve, but so much has been affected and has been able to move forward. And Sundance,
Yeah.
Sundance has been a great champion of diversity as well,
Yeah.
silently, quietly along, but they really have helped people of color in this business. If it wasn't for Sundance, there would be no Ryan Coogler. Even though he went to USC, it was Sundance that really uh, uh, helped shape him with Fruitville Station.
Mm.
So it is just for me, it's wonderful, and I love parts of technology that has made it available for us not to wait on anybody, but to do our own projects.
Yeah.
When you and I were starting, we didn't have access to cameras. We didn't
Yeah.
have that kind of
Equipment. Right.
money to go rent, a
Yeah.
big piece of equipment.
Right.
I was very lucky in that early on in my career, I worked with Robert Townsend, and
Right.
he kind of set the bar. He figured out, hey, we can go rent equipment for a weekend and only pay 1 day's rate for it. I
Yeah.
could go get kids from USC to come and do the cinematography and do the sound and the audio, and that's how he made it happen. So for me, and it was around the same time of Stand and Deliver, so I got to see another way to do it.
Hmm.
But most people don't have that opportunity. And what was wonderful about Robert's pushing forward was it allowed Robert Rodriguez to come in,
Hmm.
because he saw what Robert did. It was
Hmm.
a great opportunity for Vin Diesel, because he took a page from Hollywood Shuffle and saved up 50 grand and did a short that I say every actor should see it, because he sets it up where he shows Hollywood how to buy him. This is how you place me. Here was a guy who was kind of ambivalent, ethnic wise. Where do we put it? We don't know. But he made this little short that says, oh, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, and you could do this with me. I fit in all of those categories. So I am I'm a big believer, first of all, that you don't wait, you do it
Yeah.
yourself, and so it is wonderful. And I tell every young person, you got this phone.
Yeah. It's amazing
The
what it can do.
phone
Isn't that
can
amazing?
make a movie.
Isn't that
You
crazy?
can do things with this phone
Yeah.
that is good, do things to better your career. So I think today we are in a much better, even though it's the wild wild west as far as uh you got TV, you got film, you got streaming, you got internet. It's still fantastic
Yeah.
in how it is. I want to know what you want your legacy to be.
My legacy. Well, I guess I would have to ask myself another question before that is, what is my purpose? I think my purpose, let me answer that first, is to leave the world better than I found it. And I do, my footprint on this world is pretty gentle and respectful. Legacy wise,
I would also put
I
in there, I
yeah,
would also put in with gentle and respectful, is that you're generous.
generous. Yeah, yeah.
Generous.
People have been very generous with me. I've
Yeah,
had
but
some really great, generous mentors along the way, and yeah, and I try and be generous, as well, in return. Legacy wise, I feel like we already kind of like hit legacy pretty early on. Being part of Stand and Deliver, that is like cinematic history. So I feel really good about that. I'd like to repeat, do something great like that again. Um, you know, um, I still have some time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Whether it
absolutely.
be, whether it be in a different aspect, I don't know if casting is my last stop. I wrote, I co-wrote a screenplay with a friend of mine, um, and it got optioned recently.
Yay!
Yeah, so it's really happy
Awesome.
about that. My first writing um, gig.
Well, you've also produced.
Yeah, I'd like to do some more of that, with other people's money, you know, not with mine. I don't want to take my 50 grand and put it into something. But if you have 50 grand, I'd love to tell a good story with it. you know, I, that's funny.
I
So
love you, Patrick.
thank
Thank
you,
you
Lydia.
so much for this time. This was
Thanks.
phenomenal, and um just how you broke down script analysis.
Did that make sense to you?
Oh my God. I've been waiting for this for at least a decade.
Yeah.
So from you, I've been
Yeah.
waiting to hear. I've always said, I want to be in the class. What are you doing in
Okay.
the
All
class?
right. All right.
And so I
Well, there's a
think you
lot more
should
to
do
it.
it. I think you should do an online course as one
Okay.
of your buckets
Okay.
of passive income.
All
I
right.
I do believe that would help people tremendously. I mean,
Well,
just
yeah.
it's just beautiful
Thanks.
how you set it up.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, we can there's much more to explore. When I do that class, I start off with explaining the three dimensions, and then we really get in depth into motive. And then what I love to do, this is the fun part, I couldn't do it today, but what I love to do is then show examples from movies and how all these elements, are present all at once. I love to, and then we analyze line by line, scenes from movies. Like one of my favorites is Shawshank. So I will run scenes from Shawshank, and I'll show them. I'll put the subtitles on so that we can see the text, and then we'll talk about the lines between the lines that are only coming forth, through reactions or through body language or through a blink of the eye or through a beat of silence. And we talk about that, and then when you can see what's driving the characters, what they want, and it's really clear, it's really obvious, it's right there. It's so fun to see it, in examples, from films. So we'll look at Shawshank, we'll look at, The Green Mile, we'll look at Terms of Endearment. I like to look at Devil Wears Prada. Just the really great films, to really analyze them is really fun. So yeah, I want you in my class the next
I
time I
I
take
will
it.
be there.
I want you there.
I already have ideas in my head for you.
All right, great. I love it.
So thank you for joining us. If you are an actor who is in need of some organization, some motivation, and some planning, please go to actingsmarternow.com so you can check out my online course to help you get that, or my planner for you. It's called My Acting Planner to organize your life as an actor. It's all in there. It's 40 years in the making. I have put it all together to help you help your career, because acting is the beginning, but you got to know the business, and you have to know how to respect people. Just like Patrick said, this business is about respect. It's also about longevity. It is not a winning the lotto type of business. Think of acting like being a doctor. It takes years to improve and get better and do great performances. It's not like YouTube where you get it in a second, you get a million subscribers and then you're off. Real acting takes a little more time than that, and it's not microwavable. It's like a slow cooking crock pot. And you got to enjoy the process. You have to enjoy it. So with that, thank you for joining us.